I like to think that what makes me an effective teacher is that I paid attention to my own college teachers. That may sound obvious, but the key to my success is that I take everything they did and basically do the opposite. If you had my instructors, you'd be tempted to do the same. My undergraduate advisor was a world-famous big shot, someone who literally wrote the book on black holes that we used in the text in his class. To me, he was the advisor fairy, someone far too busy with many important things to meet with me. Instead, at the end of every semester, I would leave my schedule on his office chair. The next morning, as if by magic, I would return to his still empty office and find my schedule magically signed, usually with a short addendum that read, "Do more." Sometimes, often, "do better." I think of my advisor often when I am with my own students and how unhelpful that all was, not just because of its vagueness. I've always struggled with proving myself. I can still hear him telling me to do more and do better. I probably didn't need that extra push in that direction. Long before college and long after, I chased recognition, hoping that there would be some final challenge met, some final victory won, some ultimate moment of triumph in which I would feel at last accomplished and accepted. It's easy to lose yourself in that pursuit. So many of my students understand this. Each of my own advisees wants to do well, of course. To them, my first piece of advice to them has always been, good enough is good enough. That in your first year in college, your main job, perhaps your only job, is to make it out the other side. It's okay. Slow down and enjoy this amazing moment in your life. We are surrounded by a culture that pushes and urges and celebrates running at full speed. There's always another challenge, always another monster to slay. There's activity and input from every direction, from ourselves, from our friends and family, even from our phones. We are told repeatedly not to waste time, not to waste our lives. And that's why this charming book, A Psalm for the Wild-Built, is a solve for me, and more generally for our times. There is so much in this book about what it means to be alive, about how we can be happy, and ultimately, as Moscap endlessly asks, what do we really need? Near the end of the book, sibling Dex and Moscap discuss the meaning of life. Dex has been searching for meaning to their life, driving them literally each day to each day's next peak in the distance. In a quiet moment, they ponder what it means to be alive, and Dex's fear that there may not, in the end, be any meaning to life. Quote, Dex turned the mug over and over in their hands. "It doesn't bother you," Dex said, "the thought that your life might mean nothing in the end?" "That's true for all life, I've observed. Why would it bother me?" Moscap's eyes glowed brightly. "Do you not find consciousness alone to be the most exhilarating thing? Here we are in this incomprehensibly large universe, on this one tiny moon, on one incidental planet. And in all the time this entire scenario has existed, every component has been recycled over and over and over again into infinitely incredible configurations. And sometimes those configurations are special enough to be able to see the world around them. You and I, we're just atoms that arrange themselves the right way, and we can understand that about ourselves. Is that not amazing?" Yes, but that's what scares me. All I have is right now, and at some point, I'll just end. I can't predict when that will be, and if I don't use this time for something, I don't make the absolute most of it, then I'll have wasted something precious. How does the idea of maybe being meaningless sit well with you? Moscap considered. "Because I know that no matter what, I'm wonderful," it said. Unquote. I find that I love this passage. Another author might have made this a bitterly nihilist moment. To me, it is a reminder that we can spend so much time and energy trying to make meaning in our lives that we miss the wonder of being alive. That in our endless striving to do more and do better, we run a race without noticing the beautiful countryside we're running in, or the companions with whom we are running, or our magnificent, singular, beautiful selves. It is a reminder that we are, each of us, enough, and we are wonderful.
Thank you, Meg. And thank you, Dee and Muse. That was wonderful. So I have 3 lessons from this book that I want to impart or share. They were the 3 things that stood out most to me when I read this and that sort of held on in my mind. So I'm going to do this sermon in 3 short parts, and in between each we'll sing a little bit. So the first is the God that Dex serves, the God of small comforts. So I found this blog when I was researching in order to write this sermon, and the blog is titled Aficionado, and it's all about books. And the post was titled The Cozy Theology of Monk and Robot. And here's a passage from that blog. When you think of a monk, what do you picture? Thanks to popular culture, my immediate mental image is pretty Christian and pretty medieval. What I'm here to talk about is the notion that religious devotion is often shorthanded with suffering. Sibling Dex, the monk protagonist of the Monk and Robot series, is the complete opposite of this. Dex is a monk, but their devotion is defined and depicted not through their suffering, but through them having a nice time. Sibling Dex, you see, is a monk of Alalay, the god of small comforts. On the moon of Panja, the dominant faith system is the worship of the Six. The pantheon consists of 3 parent gods, Trikali of the threads, Grylum of the inanimate, Bosch of the cycle, and the 3 child gods, Chal of constructs or machines, Samaphar of mysteries, and Alalay of small comforts. Alalay comes last on that list as it appears in the beginning of Book 2, A Prayer for the Crown Shy. But don't let that fool you. Small comforts are an integral part of the function of this very practical sci-fi world. This blog continues, far from living in harsh conditions, Dex's traveling caravan is fitted with what sounds like the comfiest bed on the planet. Far from being celibate, Dex refers casually to lovers and hookups. Far from associating virtue with denying oneself pleasure, spiritual devotion to Alalay is intrinsically interlinked with having a good time. It sounds sort of silly, boiled down to the details. Sleeping on fluffy pillows, having a love life, serving people tea. Come on. But in this narrative world Chambers has created, there is nothing more important. So as I said earlier when we opened the Wonder Box, is that one of the things that's so powerful about a book of utopian science fiction is the ways that it shows us another possibility, another way of imagining the future. And the idea that comfort can be not only a selfish pursuit, but it could instead be a spiritual pursuit, really resonated with me as I read. Dex's commitment to serving the people they meet with delicious tea, beautiful cups, comfortable cushions, in ways that offer comfort for whatever it is that they are dealing with. It reminded me of how we Unitarian Universalists think of pastoral care. We're not trying to save anyone or anything. We're just trying to offer comfort and care. None of Dex's comforts are at the expense of anyone else or of the environment. In a world that is often harsh and painful, comfort can be an antidote. It's not a nihilistic, selfish approach. Instead, Sibling Dex shows us a way that comfort can be given and received in the embrace of community, with care for others as well as care for oneself. About a third of the way through the second book, A Prayer for the Crown Shy, sibling Dex is feeling anxious about their ability to be of use, to do more or do better. And they're in a bit of a tizzy about it while they're trying to take a bath in the bathhouse. And the paragraph goes like this. That was all right, they reminded themselves, even though part of them still felt as though they hadn't earned the hot soak or the good food. Welcome comfort, they reminded themselves, rubbing the little pectin printed bear with their thumb. Without it, you cannot stay strong. Isn't that the truth?
As we remain seated, please join in singing the third verse of Wake Now, My Senses. Wake now, compassion, give heed to the cry. Voices of suffering fill the wide sky. Take as your neighbor, both stranger and friend, praying and striving their hardship to end.
So early on in the first book, Psalm for the Wild Built, this exchange happens between Moscap the robot and Dex the human as they are trying to get to know and understand each other. Moscap is referring to another robot and says, it. So, it is the correct phrasing then? You wouldn't prefer they? Oh, no, Moscap interrupts. Those sorts of words are for people. Robots are not people. We are machines, and machines are objects. Objects are its. I'd say you're more than just an object, Dex says. The robot looked a touch offended. I would never call you just an animal, sibling Dex. It turned its gaze toward the road, head held high. We don't have to fall into the same category to be of equal value. Dex had never thought about it like that. You're right, they said. I'm sorry. Now, this is one of those paragraphs that stuck with me for days, just rolling around in my head. I could not stop thinking about it. So much of human history and oppression is rooted in this very idea. Categorization is not inherently bad. Very small children do it. It's when we make implicit hierarchies between those categories that's the problem. We don't have to be the same category to be of equal value. Reverend Hannah mentioned in her Pride sermon last month that much of pride has been rooted in, see, straight people, we gay people are just like you. But many GLBTQ people don't want to be like straight people. They want to have the same rights and safety and access to health care that everyone else should have, but they shouldn't have to be the same in order to do that. In the intercultural development continuum, which is a method of assessing one's orientations toward cultural difference, there are 5 stages of development. The first 2 are monocultural mindsets, denial and polarization. Then there's the third stage, minimization. And then the last are, 4th and 5th, are intercultural mindsets, acceptance and adaptation. But this third stage, minimization, when people take the test, the assessment, to find out where they are on this continuum, most educated white folks, like me and many of the people in this room, most end up in that third stage, minimization. It's the stage that says, we're all the same. We're all people. We all bleed. Who cares what color our skin is? And that, of course, is better than an antagonistic approach toward cultural difference. But it doesn't go all the way. It erases the important differences that matter to us. Like Dex telling Moscap that robots aren't just its. Minimization says that we need to be the same in order to have equal value. But this book reminded me, and I try to remember, we can celebrate our differences. And we can also all deserve fair and loving treatment.
And please join in singing verse 5 of Wake Now My Senses. Wake now our vision of ministry clear, brighten our pathway with radiance here, mingle our calling with all who will share, work toward a planet transformed by our care.
All right, lesson number 3. As I've already said throughout the service this morning, the reason I wanted to share this book with you is because it has a philosophy of hope. It offers another possibility. I went through quite a dystopian future novel phase when I was in my young adulthood. I think I read almost all of them. And while those might have the effect of scaring us into different action, books like the Monk and Robot series actually show us a better path forward. So many things in the world that Becky Chambers built through her words are beautiful and hopeful. The very foundation of the story, which begins with the idea that when robots became sentient, humans didn't try to enslave them, and instead found a new way forward. Imagine that. I don't know if I can. The communities, homes, vehicles that are described in this book are integrated with the natural world. They've created new ways of creating things, replacing things without plastic or without fossil fuel plastic. They use bioplastic. It's inspiring. But for me, the most mind-blowing of the ideas that Chambers creates is the economy of PEBs. PEBs are short for pebbles. It's the way that people track the exchange of goods and services in their society. They no longer actually use pebbles, they just track them on their handheld devices. So I'm going to read kind of a lengthy excerpt because why explain it when Dex can explain it? So here you go. Dex is trying to explain to MOSCAP the economic system. Let's say you go to a farmer and get an apple, and let's say that's worth 1 PEB to you. What would I do with apples? Just pretend you can eat apples, okay? All right. So you take the apple and you give the farmer 1 PEB. How? I'll explain later. Let's just stick with the farmer for now. If you say so, I now have 1 hypothetical apple and -1 hypothetical PEBs. Right. The farmer's work has benefited you. So now you need to provide something to benefit someone else. The farmer, you mean? No, Dex explains. It can be the farmer if you provide something the farmer wants. But exchanging PEBs isn't about bartering. It's about benefit. You are a part of the community, and the farmer doing something for you means that they are effectively doing something for the group. So you've got your -1 PEB balance now. Let's say you're, I don't know, a musician. You go play music in town and 5 people listen and they each give you 2 PEBs. Now you've got 9 PEBs. Make sense? MOSCAP replied, I believe so. Instead of a system of currency that tracks individual trade, you have one that facilitates exchange throughout the community. Because all exchange benefits the community as a whole? Exactly. This explanation goes on further for a while, and then MOSCAP has an important question. And I'm not penalized for the debt I incurred at the start? Absolutely not. We don't do that. Well, we don't do that anymore. Whew, God's above history class was a long time ago. Nobody should be barred from necessities or comforts just because they don't have the right number next to their name. Having debt isn't a good feeling. Everybody has a negative balance from time to time. For lots of reasons, that's fine. That's part of the ebb and flow. But if someone has a huge negative balance, well, that says they need help. Maybe they're sick. Maybe they have something going on at home. Maybe they just need someone to carry them for a while. Everybody ends up there sometimes. If I saw that a friend was in the red, I'd make a point of checking in. You can see other people's balances? Yeah, it's all public. Does that not get competitive? Dex squinted at Moscap. Why would it? Now, I know this is utopian future. And well, utopias don't exist. But this possibility for an economy that relies on care and trust and support brought me to tears. Especially that question of what happens when debt occurs. We just help each other. Wouldn't that be incredible? Books are a way of showing us a new path forward. And another way of finding our way forward is communities like this one. I think of our Unitarian Universalist Fellowship as a potential microcosm of the beloved community, a chance to practice and become the world that we want to live in. We can't have it out there until we can practice it in here, and then we carry it out as we're able. May we have the imagination, the commitment, and the care to make it so. Amen.